Are you looking for shrubs that will tolerate a shaded area or maybe a woodland garden? Well, I've got you covered in this video. I'll share my top picks for shade-worthy shrubs. Many of them are native, and I'm also going to include their growing zone, size, and season of interest. You're sure to find one that you love on this list, so let's get started. And before we get started, it's important to note that all shrubs need at least some sun to grow. There are virtually no plants that will grow in complete darkness. So spoiler alert, you need a little bit of sun to grow any of these. I've separated the plants in this list into two categories. Full shade, which is less than 3 hours of sun or indirect light per day, and partial shade, which is 3 to 6 hours of sun or light per day. First, I just want to get out of the way some of these staple shrubs that you'll see on every shaded shrub list. There are shrubs like hydrangeas, azaleas, and rhododendrons. So azaleas and rhododendrons, they bloom in the spring, and hydrangeas bloom in the summer. And what makes them staples and really great shrubs to try in a shade garden is that not only are they tolerant of the shade, but all three of those will bloom. And that is something that is kind of difficult to find in the shade at times. So definitely check those out, but we're going to go into a lot more detail with different shrubs that you can use that you may not have heard of before. And of course, this isn't an exhaustive list of every shade shrub in the world. So if you have one that you love that didn't make my list, leave it in the comments below so that other people can look it up and enjoy that shrub as well. So first, let's go over the shrubs that tolerate true full shade. This can be difficult as full shade locations get less than 3 hours of sun per day, and that's really not a lot. The first on the list is bush honeysuckle, also called deer vela, and this variety is called Kodiak Black. It's a native cultivar, so that means that it's from a native plant and it's been changed a little bit to fit into home gardens either by size or by some other feature. So it's not native, but it's a cultivar. Growing in zones 5 to 7, it's sun and shade tolerant, which is really cool. And it gets about 3 to 4 feet high and 4 to 5 feet wide. It has small bell-like yellow flowers in the summer and striking dark foliage in spring and summer that turns bright red in the fall. So it's a really cool shrub. And it's a great soil stabilizer for slopes and embankments if you're looking for a shrub that's not only shade tolerant but will solve a couple problems for you in your landscape. And another great thing about it is that deer tend to leave this deer vela bush honeysuckle alone. Next is another bush honeysuckle, and this one is called Firefly Nightglow. It grows in zones 3 to 7, so a little bit more cold tolerant, this one. And it's also sun and shade tolerant. It gets about 2 to 3 feet high and 2 to 3 feet wide. So Firefly Nightglow is more cold hardy. It's a native cultivar of bush honeysuckle with the same yellow trumpet-like flowers in late spring through about early summer. It's got striking burgundy foliage in spring and summer, and that turns red in the fall as well. It's easy to care for, low maintenance, and again, a great soil stabilizer for the slopes and embankments. It grows full sun, part sun, and even shade and deer resistant within reason. Next on the list is Sweetspire Scentlandia, and this is a native cultivar as well. It grows in zones 5 to 9. It's sun and shade tolerant as well, about 2 to 3 feet high and 2 to 3 feet wide. This is a proven winners shrub. It's in the color choice grouping of proven winner shrubs. And it's got these scented, long, almost like bottle brush style white flowers in the summer. And it's got this really cool glossy green foliage that turns red in the fall. It handles periodic drought and it works well also in wet soil, so very diverse and also typically deer resistant. Another one on this full shade list is the yellow twig dogwood. You may have heard of the red twig dogwood, which is similar and will grow in shade as well, but I thought I'd highlight this yellow one because it is so beautiful. It grows in zones 4 to 9 in full to part shade, and it gets a little larger, 6 to 10 feet high by 5 to 6 feet wide. It's got white flowers in the spring, white berries in the fall, and not only that, this very impressive plant has intense winter interest because it has these bright yellow twigs. So when all of the leaves drop on the plant, you'll see these bright yellow twigs all winter long. So it's really cool. It's very wildlife and butterfly friendly. The twigs will be a lot brighter if you have more sun. So even though it grows in shade, the brightness of the branches comes from having a bit more sun. So I'd say it's better in part sun than it is in full shade, but it will grow. It's also very adaptable to different soil types, great for erosion control, and tolerates slope planting well. These are not deer resistant, so that's something to definitely be aware of. It would look great with a backdrop of very dark evergreen shrubs to make these branches really pop in the winter. And like I said, it's really similar to that red twig dogwood, which I think pairs super well with white birch. So you might want to try that combination too. So next are shrubs for part shade, and this is anywhere from 3 hours to 6 hours of sun per day. If you do have part shade instead of full shade, there are a lot more options available to you, so I hope to introduce you to some of those right now. First is the native meadow sweet spirea, and this grows in zones 3 to 7 in full sun to part shade. It gets about 3 to 5 feet high and 3 to 5 feet wide. So unlike the flat top blooms of other spirea, meadow sweet has these tiny clusters of frilly blooms that form kind of cone-shaped spikes in white or very pale pinks. They have a scent, so they'll perfume your garden all summer long. The foliage has almost like a toothy edge to it, and it's bright green through spring and summer and turns golden yellow in the fall. So this is a great multi-season shrub to add to your garden. This particular variety is part of the National Audubon Society's line of natives that helps birds and wildlife thrive. It's a caterpillar host plant for azure butterflies. It provides cover, nesting, and protection for birds and wildlife. It's got these showy, fragrant flowers. It makes a great cut flower as well. A wildlife and pollinator friendly butterfly and cottage gardens, rain and water gardens. It's great for wet areas. Drought tolerant and moisture loving, deer resistant, no serious pest or disease problems. This shrub is like a rare find because it tolerates so much. Next up is northern spicebush. This grows in zones 4 to 9 in full sun to part shade. It gets 6 to 12 feet high and 6 to 12 feet wide. So northern spicebush, it's a spicy, like citrus scent, I would explain it as. It's a native plant. It's got yellow flowers in the spring, and these flowers come out before the foliage comes out. So it's sort of yellow flowers on bare branches, similar to a serviceberry or forsythia does this. The foliage turns yellow gold color in the fall. It's very striking. It's a great native plant. It will feed birds, and it also hosts the black spicebush swallowtail butterflies. They lay white eggs on the underside of these leaves. And there are both male and female varieties of the northern spicebush, and it's recommended to grow at least 3 to improve the chances of pollinating this particular shrub. So you need a bit of room to have this one in your garden. It's also a great shrub for screening and privacy issues. It's very adaptable to different soil types. It tolerates that full sun to part shade, like I said, although it's more compact and it provides better fall color if it's given more sun. So that's something to think about as well. And spicebush is considered deer resistant, so another great one if you have any deer pressure. Next up is the Arnold Promise Witch Hazel, and this is a native cultivar that grows in zones 5 to 9 in full to part shade. This is what it says, although I've seen it grow in a lot of shade here, and I'm in Northeast Pennsylvania. It gets about 15 feet high to 15 feet wide, so I would almost consider this a small multi-stem tree versus a shrub, but it is technically a shrub. I feel like every garden should have a witch hazel. They have amazing four-season interest and this open spreading habit. The flowers are yellow and they're almost wavy, clear, like yellow petals, and they have these little red cups, and they appear on bare branches in late winter to early spring. So it's one of the earliest bloomers that you'll have in your garden. So if you're looking for that interest in the very, very early signs of spring, witch hazel brings in the spring, and it's a beautiful, beautiful shrub. It's a real problem solver, I find this plant. It will grow in the shade as an understory beneath older shade trees if you have a space like that where you're trying to grow something under already established mature trees. It likes acidic soil, but it grows in clay, and it's fairly adaptable to whatever soil type that you have. Next up is Summersweet Ruby Spice, also called Clethra. So this grows in zones 4 to 9 in full sun to part shade. It gets about 3 to 6 feet high and 3 to 4 feet wide. So Summersweet Ruby Spice cleftora grows with a vivid pink flower spikes in the summer, and they bloom on new growth. In the fall, the foliage turns yellow and it adds a lot of multi-season interest to any garden. This is like a medium-sized shrub. It grows well in sun and part shade, and it's tolerant of quite a variety of conditions, including along roadsides and even along seashores. It can tolerate that salt. It also is tolerant of clay soil and most soil types, so it's a great option. Next up is Sweetshrub, Simply Scentsational, and this grows in zones 4 to 9 in full to part sun. It gets about 6 feet high and 4 to 5 feet wide. It's got burgundy blooms on it in spring and summer. This shrub is not only beautiful, it also has the most intriguing scent. I think it smells like juicy fruit gum, but if you have a different take on what the scent of this is, leave it in the comments below, because I always love hearing what different people think this smells like. It's medium-sized shrub, 6 feet high, 4 to 5 feet wide, and it has magnolia-like burgundy flowers. I tried to put a close-up here on the screen so you could see what these beautiful flowers look like. I think they're very unique. I don't see a lot of shrubs blooming with a burgundy color. I like that it's kind of exotic looking, yet it's very cold hardy to zone 4, so definitely another cool one to check out. Next up is Arrowwood Viburnum. This one is called Glitters and Glows, and it grows in zones 4 to 8 in full to part sun, and it gets about 4 to 5 feet high and wide. I love that there's no pollinator needed for this Arrowwood Viburnum. It's called Glitters and Glows, and boy does it. It has this beautiful, like the typical glossy viburnum foliage that you're used to seeing if you're familiar with viburnums. And in early summer, it's got white blooms that look like little lace caps. It's kind of a petite size for a viburnum, and I like that about it. And I also like that it doesn't need pollination. So even if you only have this one single shrub in your garden, it will produce berries, it will fruit. And in the fall, it gets these blue fruit on it, and that is really cool. So multi-season interest again for this Glitters and Glows Arrowwood Viburnum. Next up is another viburnum. This one's called Brandywine, and it grows in zones 5 to 9 in full to part sun. Again, it's like that mid-size, 5 to 6 feet high and wide. This one also doesn't need a pollinator. It's got the showy, glossy viburnum leaves that bloom white mid to late spring, and the foliage changes to an incredible like dark maroonish red in the fall, and the berries transform. They start as a green and then they turn shades of vivid pink and blue. So at different points in time you'll have berries that are green, and then you'll have some that are pink and some that are blue mixed together, and it's all on this red foliage in the fall. So really, really cool shrub, very different. Next up is Buttonbush Sugar Shack. And this grows in zones 4 to 10 in full to part sun. It gets 4 to 5 feet high and 4 to 5 feet wide. It's got these really unique, spiky and fragrant white flowers. In mid to late summer, they produce red ball-shaped fruit, and it's got that glossy green foliage similar to a viburnum. And the foliage also turns burgundy in the fall. So lots of interest, lots of really cool things. I like the flowers, but I also like the fruit is very interesting and almost looks like a flower in itself. So the only thing about Sugar Shack is that it prefers moist soil. So if you have a drier area, it's probably not going to do as well. But for moist areas, it's great, and it can be trimmed in early spring. So I just want to go over a few other shrubs that you could use for shade that are evergreen. So this means they keep the foliage all season long, even in the winter. And that's why the Rhododendron is such a staple shrub, because that's one of them that will keep its foliage all year long, and it blooms. But here are some others you can try. Any of the yews, boxwoods, inkberry hollies, and other hollies do pretty well in the shade. For yews, you can try this unique variety called a columnar Japanese plum yew. I like that it's very tall and narrow, and it fits in just about any space. For boxwoods, there's all different kinds. I really like Northern Charm. I think that's really beautiful. Grows into a perfect ball without even having to prune it. Inkberry holly is also a really great option if you're not into boxwoods, and inkberry holly is native. You can try the variety called Shamrock. It's very pretty, looks really similar to boxwood, but it's also native. And holly, again, you can try this sky pencil holly. It's great for a really tight space or creating a focal point in your landscape. So I really love that one too. But like I said, any of the used boxwoods, hollies, they all do pretty well in shade. So all of the links to the plants I mentioned in this video are in the description below if you want to check them out or even purchase them online. I'll leave links so you can purchase them. And if you really like this video, you would also like my other plant list videos. I have a bunch of them. I'll leave a link to the playlist right here, and I will see you over in the next plant list video. Bye for now.